What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the NBA Fantasy Lounge. And in today's episode, we're going to be touching on the best league settings, or some of the best league settings that I think that you can have for your particular NBA fantasy league. Now, this is applicable to people that are either setting up their own fantasy league or even joining a league, which you can view the different league settings before you join it, just to ensure that you're getting to be able to play in the league that you want to actually play with as well, because there's some small differences in each particular league outside just the categories and scoring that they have. That's really important, in my opinion, sets apart how successful you're going to be in that particular league and how enjoyable it's going to be as well. So let's dive right into it. As you can see, I'm sharing my screen here of one of the leagues which I'm a commissioner of. Now, this is just a head-to-head standard 9 category league. However, there's a couple of key points that I want to bring out here that will be applicable to a lot of things in this particular league. Now, the first one we're going to touch on is the league name. Now, if you're setting up a league, this is probably more applicable to that. I believe you only have like a 30 character limit when you name your league, so it's really important that you put a league name that is relevant to what you're trying to attract. So for example, I have $20 league / active managers. I have $20 league to indicate that it's a money league, and I have active managers to indicate that I'm only looking for active managers as well. You got to remember that when people are scrolling through tons and tons of public leagues, they're most likely just going to navigate to the league that suits their draft time that they want to draft in, because obviously they don't want to join a league that the draft time is somewhere at midnight or 2 a.m. in the morning where they're not available. So that's the first thing. But the second thing they're going to do is probably look at your league name. They're not really going to look at your league settings for the most part. They will probably just look to see the types of categories you have, but they're not going to go into depth with the other stuff. So it's important to ensure that you have a league name that is relevant to the type of people you're trying to attract. The second thing to talk about is the draft time. Now, this is really important if you're setting up a league. It's really important for the main reason that a lot of people don't change their actual time zone in their Yahoo profile. They simply set up a Yahoo profile just to actually be able to access NBA Fantasy or ESPN or whatever it is. But it's important to actually configure your time zone of your profile to the time zone you actually live in. The reason that is because when you set up the draft time, it actually doesn't show you the time zone when you're actually picking the time. And if you miss that part here where it dictates your time zone, you may miss the fact that you're actually setting up a draft time that's not applicable to your particular time zone. So it's super important to set your profile against your time zone so that when you do pick a draft time for that league, it actually matches your particular draft time. And this is also applicable to people looking for leagues as well. It will say the draft time zone, but if you set your profile against it, it will then automatically show you all draft times in your time zone as well, so you don't have to get that time and then convert it and then figure out which actual real time it is for you. So it's really important, little things, but I think it sort of makes a big difference, especially if you're going to set up a league for people. The cash league setting is the next thing. This particular setting is basically the equivalent of the league safe profile. So league safe league or league safe? I can't remember what it is. I actually don't use it. Let me know what it is in the comments actually. But League Safe is basically a platform. We'll go with League Safe, but it's a platform that basically collects your cash and then disperses it once the league finishes to the winners of that particular league as well. So it's basically just a holding platform that disperses the money later on. Yahoo has its own. It's basically called a cash league, and you can configure it through them. Just remember though that it's only applicable and only works for people in I believe in definitely in USA, and I believe in Canada as well, and nowhere else. So if you're geographically located outside those two countries, you're going to have to just do the traditional method where you collect everyone's money via PayPal, and then you hold it, and then you manually disperse that after as well. So little small thing, but it is important to sort of know that as well. And if you are from a different geographical background than America and Canada, again, if you're going to join a cash league, just remember that as well, that you probably aren't going to be able to pay with them using that cash league setting. You're going to have to find out what their PayPal is, and then obviously pay them by that, or some other way as well, which can be a little bit dodgy as well if you don't trust the commissioner. So yeah, just a little tip there. I think that's really important. Let's touch on the scoring types now. So scoring types here are going to dictate the different ways that you can set up your NBA Fantasy League to be scored against. So the main three are going to be Roto, head-to-head, and points leagues. However, there's a few others as well, and we will actually do a number of other videos on this. There's a Commissioner Tools button, which I've got up here. I'm actually going to have some more videos on that over the course of the next few weeks, where we'll actually go through the different types of scoring options and the detail in which you can set these particular things as well. Because just reading these, they're not super, let's say they're not super informative. And even when you go to the little eye icon, which is in the edit settings here, they've got a little info button next to them. They don't always really state what it supposed to be. So that's why I'm doing this video. I think it's going to be really helpful for people because I struggled when I was first a commissioner, and so I just wanted to pass that information on to you. And again, if for those watching, if you guys have tips, make sure to leave them in the comments because everyone's going to be able to learn from these tips and going to be helped out from them as well. So we'll move on as well. Max acquisitions per week. This is just a basically a setting that allows you to dictate how many acquisitions or waiver wire picks every team in your league can get. I generally always leave them to maximum. However, if you do play like a roto league and you have heaps of like 6, 7, 8 acquisitions per week, you may want to set a limit so that they're not just maxing out and then basically winning the league because they just have the most players playing. So that's really important as well if you do want to set something like that up. If you just play a standard head-to-head 9-cat like me, I can leave it on no maximum because at the end of the day, if they're going to be rolling over players, then they're going to be giving up good players into the waiver wire as well, so it's not too much of an issue for me. The weekly deadline, this is super critical as well, I think, because the deadline at the moment for me is set at February 23rd. I think it's really important. There's about 6 different preset settings you can get. You can't customize them. There's like February 23rd, March 2nd, and there's a few dates every 7 days from there. What I would recommend everyone is that you either do it to either February 23rd or March 2nd, and maybe even, I think it's March 9th, maybe that at the absolute latest. The reason being is that you don't want to set, well, in my opinion, you don't really want to set the trade deadline prior to the NBA trade deadline, which is mid-Feb, right? So you want to have that trade deadline, have maybe a week or so, which is 23rd, and then obviously be able to let people understand, what the real NBA is going to feel like a week after the deadline, then set their deadline then as well. So it's really good to have it then so you can take advantage of the real NBA trade deadline, but you also don't want to have it too late into March because your playoffs are going to be starting. You don't want evolving rosters in playoffs. It just makes everything a lot more complicated, especially if some teams have been eliminated and some haven't. So make sure you set your trade deadline around the end of February, early March, in my opinion. I think you'll have a very consistent season if you do that as well. So we'll move on as well to the playoffs. If we scroll down to the playoff setting here, we can see that I've got 6 teams and the time that it starts, week 20, 21, 22. Now, this 6 teams is because I have a 12-team maximum, so it's allowing me to either do a 4-team playoff, a 6-team playoff, or an 8-team playoff. I like 6 teams. It just means that 50% of the people that play get in, 50% of the people don't. If you have 8, in my opinion, it's sort of too big, especially considering that playoffs are elimination. You don't want to just let every sort of team that didn't do that well make the playoffs as well. So 6 keeps things sort of competitive without going too extreme and letting everyone into the playoffs. Now, this is really important, the timing in which it starts. I love to set mine to end at the end of March, purely because I like to avoid the silly season and I like to avoid a lot of injury management or load management type scenarios as well. Because as you know, in the real NBA, when it gets to sort of the start of March, a lot of the playoff teams, playoff seeding, it hasn't been fully locked, but it's well known. The people that are in are sort of in, and maybe there's a few teams battling for either positions in the playoffs, playoff seeding, or that 8th or 7th spot, which is not that critical as well. So you get a lot of resting at the time, and that's why, in my opinion, it's really important to start the playoffs either at the very start or sort of mid-March, so that it ends at the end of March as well, which is really good because that means everyone's playing with their full strength of the team, and they're not going to be affected by load management and teams resting players and all that stuff, which is sort of unfair, right? You want some uncertainty, which is part of NBA fantasy, but you don't want it to be completely uncertain because that's sort of like not fair and just leaves it up to a lot of just I guess uncertainty again. Let's move on as well to publicly viewable leagues as well. So this is an important video as well. So, and let me know as well what you think about playoffs. Really subjective, by the way. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about that, especially around when you like the playoffs to start. Now, make league publicly viewable. Make sure you have this on if you're starting a league where you don't have all 12 players or you don't have a full set of players, because you're going to need to attract new players, and you've got to make sure that it's publicly viewable. It's a little setting here, but people tend to miss out on that. And the last one is the roster positions. Now, I'm going to do a more detailed video on this later. However, I will say that roster positions are super critical, especially the IL plus spots, and I'll give you a bit of a breakdown on this after. I personally like 2 ILs and 2 IL plus, just because of the amount of uncertainty now in today's NBA with health and safety protocols and just terrible game injury news nowadays. Like you realize teams release like game time decisions on like 20 minutes before a game, half an hour before a game. It's like, if you play NBA fantasy, which is, I know it's not that important compared to the real game, but doesn't that annoy you? Like you can't be sitting there monitoring 20 minutes before game, is this player going to play? If not, I got to rotate him in or pick up the waiver pick for him. It's like, oh Jesus. So I mean, let me know what you guys think about that, but it is annoying to me. So we'll touch a bit on that as well in another video, and just the different types of IL plus settings you can have. And and how important it is. And the last one, which we will go into, is the weekly deadline. I left this one for last because I think it's actually really super critical and doesn't get talked about a lot. I'll just explain what the daily today is. The daily today, what that means is that with the waiver wire picks, if you pick it up today, that's the daily, you will be able, that play will be reflected in your lineup today. So there's actually 3 settings. There's daily today, daily tomorrow, and I think daily weekly or something like that. Maybe I'm saying the last one wrong. I'm not sure what it is, to be honest. I never play that. I'll always play daily today or daily tomorrow, and I'm actually going to stick with daily today in this particular season. And the reason is that because, as I said earlier, if you have a lot of these late game time injuries like half an hour before the game, you need to be able to swap a player in on that day. So it's really important that you have like a good amount of max acquisitions per week. So we have, it's going to be 5 this year, but if we have 5, we want to make sure that a team can get that player in on the day that they need to get him in. So daily today is super critical. Make sure it says daily today if you want your waiver wire picks to be reflected that day that you pick them as well. It's super important. All right, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments again. All this stuff is subjective. I'd really like to hear what you say. If you have any other tips, please share it with everyone else. And I think that, there's a lot of ways you can set it up, but I hope that those tips helped you guys as well. If you did like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, I have lots of other NBA content coming, especially around the league settings and some sleepers for the upcoming season. 1.5 months to go. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I'm sure you guys can't wait either. So